The largest purse on tour and the honor of Players Champion, merely a matter of gravity. Wyndham Clark needed to jar this to force a playoff, and oh no! Catches the most devastating lip with $4.5 million on the line that you will ever see. With that, the great inevitable, Scottie Scheffler becomes the first ever player to defend his title as Players Champion, marking win number 8 for the world number 1, and it comes in back-to-back weeks as well. Scheffler following up his win at the Arnold Palmer with his second career player play on. The world of golf again runs through Scottie Scheffler. Post round is presented by the all-new TaylorMade QI irons, designed to be the straightest distance irons in golf. Kyle Porter, our senior golf writer, here with reaction. And KP, if we could just take a second here to exhale, because this whole week was dripping in drama until the final moment and the final putt there by Wyndham Clark. I want to start with Scheffler because he begins the day 5 shots back, KP, goes out with a 64 and gets it done again back-to-back weeks. How do you frame this latest historical note from the world number 1?
There's so many different ways to frame it, Joe. I'm sure we'll be talking about it all week on the First Cut podcast, and really in the lead into the Masters here in 3 weeks from now, I guess. But I want to go back to the beginning of 2022. That's where Scottie Scheffler kind of started this run. He's played in 51 tournaments since then. He's won 9 of them. That includes 2 players, 2 Arnold Palmers, a Masters, a Phoenix Open. He's won a lot over the last 51 events. He's won almost $50 million in those 51 events. So he's been extraordinary. And I think, we've said this probably too many times over the last 10 or 15 years, but I think it's time to have the conversation about whether Scottie Scheffler is the best player since Tiger. That sounds like an overreaction to kind of the moment, the Players Championship, but it's really a look at the last 2 or 3 years of what he's been doing.
It's been a Hall of Fame career in 24 months. Spectacular to watch him take the game of golf by the reins and claim it as his own, and does it in the biggest events. I know you guys on the podcast like to call them big boy events. Few bigger than the one that he just rattles off here at the Players, KP. But the ability to do it in different ways. Today he's a chaser, and nobody in the end can chase him down that final stroke as he gets it to 20 under. Just that ability to do it different ways when it feels like with these other guys we're pointing out the shortcomings in certain aspects of their games. Where is the hole? And if not a hole, how does he continue to do this the way he's doing it?
Well, I thought we found the hole, and I thought it was in his neck. I thought it was the KT tape and the, we've all had that crick in our neck. You and I are a little bit older than and we've had that inability to kind of move to the side. Look at this card, though. I mean, this is a joke. The hole out on 4 is a little bit of luck.
We should have known.
He just ball struck the heck out of this golf course. And I think, to sort of frame up the last 2 weeks, so what he did at Bay Hill and what he did at TPC Sawgrass, Joe, if you played all 8 rounds at those 2 golf tournaments, and you played to field average, that'd be really good for you and I if we played to the field average of those 2 tournaments. You'd be about 2 under after those 8 rounds, after those 2 weeks, which would be pretty solid. That's field average in 2 of the best tournaments of the year. Scottie Scheffler was 35 under after those 2 tournaments. It's been a really, even within the bigger run, it's been an amazing 2-week run of ball striking. He did a little bit last week with the putter. This week it was just straight ball striking and discipline. He stayed very disciplined over those last couple holes to not take on too much on 16, 17, and 18, get it to 20 under, and let everybody else kind of fade away a little bit. And does it at less than 100%, as you said, dealing with the neck issue from early Friday until the finish line. But again, he takes the tape here at the Players, KP. And what's interesting to me as we sit down and we really digest every moment of these tournaments is the nature of the man in the moment. And Scottie Scheffler feels so comfortable in those moments, maybe plays a foil to what we saw from the final pairing. What did you see from Wyndham Clark and Xander Schauffele? Because there is a conversation to be had around Xander. Wyndham maybe a little bit less scar tissue and less to point to, but neither of them looked all that comfortable in the moment here on Sunday. No, I think Xander's very uncomfortable at the top of the leaderboard. We've seen that in the past with him. It's not that, I mean, he's obviously a very good player. He's accomplished a lot in his PGA Tour career, but he doesn't seem to kind of love the very top of that board like some other guys on the PGA Tour. And I think for Wyndham, Wyndham was interesting for me this week because he did so much of the strokes gained over the first 2 days with his putter. And so I think there's a natural sort of regression from that, right? Over the last 2 rounds, you're not gonna make everything you look at 4 straight days. But I thought the fight was pretty good. You know, I know him and Zane ended up in the same spot. We'll see the putt on 18 here. I mean, this was what, a millimeter or two from being in a playoff with Scottie.
Diabolical.
This is brutal. That is a brutal. I mean, that's a bad lift out on a Thursday, much less to get into a playoff at the Players Championship. I thought his fight was pretty good because I don't know that he really had as much of his swing over the last 2 days as he did the first 2. So, you know, both those guys are going to be disappointed, but I actually thought even though they ended up in the same place, I kind of think about them a little bit differently, but partly because Wyndham has a U.S. Open win, but also just the fight that he showed down the stretch. And Xander just, it seemed like he kind of rolled over a little bit, although both their shots on 17 were pretty amazing.
Kyle Porter bringing us the latest from the players. The conversation will continue on the First Cut podcast. KP and the gang taking you under the ropes and into the action each and every week on tour. Download, subscribe, and enjoy the First Cut podcast. KP, digging a little deeper here because Wyndham Clark is really standing in the shadow of a man who casts a long one this week, that being Scottie Scheffler. And it can be made out to be a shortcoming for Wyndham, or you could look at his recent results, whether it be the win at the AT&T, some big boy events a year ago, as well as you mentioned, a major champion. The pace at which he's gained not only confidence but strokes on the field seems notable. Do you expect him to continue this throughout the summer as the events get bigger and he seems to relish that moment at times?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think you look at last year and you kind of think, okay, is that a one-off, him winning the Wells Fargo, and then, you know, he wins the U.S. Open, and you're like, oh, I think this is kind of the real thing. And he's kind of backed it up this year. Obviously, won Pebble. He's played great the last 2 weeks. I mean, to finish second to Scottie over the last 2 weeks is nothing to be embarrassed about. I think the thing for me, Joe, is, okay, is this that 2-year kind of run that we've seen other guys go on, like your Cam Smiths, your Jason Days, your Justin Thomases, although I would put JT in a kind of a higher caliber of player than Wyndham Clark, or is it a kind of an extended 5-8 year, hey, this guy's a top 15, top 20 type guy? That's the question I don't know the answer to, because I think both are kind of in play right now. He's certainly on a heater. I mean, he's been one of the best players in the world over the last year and a half, 2 years, but you know, can you do that for 5 years or 10 years like guys like Jon Rahm and Rory? I think that's the bigger question with Wyndham Clark.
We'll have to tap into the macro sustainability models with our guy Rick Gehman, because the answers, they always live somewhere between the emotion and the numbers, and it feels like, I don't know, we like to do our thought experiment thing, so let's do one right now. Xander Schauffele, days 1 through 3, seems to go at this in a agnostic approach, really no emotion in it. Do you think that that's limiting him come Sunday when he does have to recognize the moment and meet it?
It seems like it. It seems, you know, I've always had that theory with Ricky Fowler, where you know, do you have a real sense of, hey, now's the time to kind of pedal down? Now, I will say he was kind of scrambling all weekend, and maybe it just caught up to him at the wrong time on 14 and 15 there, when he made a couple bogeys in a row. But I'm going where you're leading me there, in that I think sometimes, you know, Scottie, we saw today, sense of the moment, knows, hey, there's no Monday golf. There's you know, I have to get it done right here. And Xander just there's not that extra gear there, that 4th or 5th gear. We've seen that at the Masters when he chased down Hideki and then backed away, hitting it in the water on 16 back in 2021. We've seen that over the course of his career at some tournaments, and I think it's a fair question to ask of somebody who is, you know, perennially a top 4, top 5 player in the world.
It is another massive check to the bank account of Xander Schauffele, but continues to lack those big-time tournaments, one of which he could have clipped here at the Players. Kyle Porter, the best in the business. We appreciate you as always. Again, check him out on the First Cut podcast. Also introducing the new QI irons, designed to be the straightest distance irons in golf. Scan the QR code right there to learn more.